I can't even look at the rejection letter anymore. It's just sitting there on the kitchen island, face up, like some kind of accusation under the too bright morning sun. The crest of her dream school is at the top, all prestigious and gold embossed, and right below it, the paragraph that slit our family's throat. I have it memorized. While your academic achievements are impressive, the personal statement submitted was structurally confusing and riddled with basic grammatical errors that were, frankly, disappointing. Disappointing. That's the word that's been echoing in the silence of our house for 3 days. It's a ghost. My mom keeps picking up the letter, her reading glasses perched on her nose, tracing the words with a trembling finger as if the ink might rearrange itself into something that makes sense. I just don't understand, she mutters to no one. Her English teacher said it was one of the best she'd ever read. My dad just stares into his cold coffee cup, his jaw so tight I'm afraid he'll crack a tooth. And Harlow is the worst part. She hasn't said more than 5 words since she opened the email. She just drifts from her bedroom to the kitchen and back again, a ghost in her own home, pale and silent and hollowed out. Her shoulders are permanently slumped, like she's carrying a weight we can't see. And me, I'm playing my part, right? The supportive older sister. I rub her back when she shuffles past. I say all the empty, useless things. It's their loss, Harlow, honestly. You're too good for them anyway. But inside, this awful, twisted feeling is coiling in my gut. It's relief. A sick, shameful, hot-in-my-chest relief, and it's immediately followed by a wave of panic so huge and cold I think I might actually throw up. Because I know exactly what happened. I know why the essay was disappointing. I'm the one who made it that way. This whole disaster, this suffocating, quiet nightmare, it's all my fault. I did this to her. I did this to us. You have to understand, it wasn't always this toxic. Or maybe it was, and I was just too young to put a name to it. This race. This secret, stupid, one-sided race that only I seemed to be running. Harlow was just Harlow. Effortlessly brilliant. Everything came so easily to her, you know? While I was grinding away for B+s in calculus, she was breezing through with A's, doodling elaborate fantasy maps in the margins of her notebooks. When I finally made the varsity soccer team as a senior after years of summer camps and extra practices, she was named captain of the debate team as a sophomore. Just like that. My parents, God love them, they honestly thought they were being encouraging. They weren't malicious, I know that deep down. But their words were like 1,000 tiny paper cuts every single day. Oh, Daphne, you should see the model volcano Harlow built. It actually smokes. Or, Harlow's aiming for the Ivy League. Isn't that something? Your state school was a great choice for you, honey, but Harlow, she's just on another level. They never said better. They never had to. It was in their tone, in the way their eyes would light up when she talked about her future. My future felt like a settled fact, a quiet, pleasant cul-de-sac. Hers was a dazzling, limitless horizon. And the pressure, my God, the pressure built up in me like steam in a faulty pipe. I started to see her successes not as her wins, but as my losses. Every award she won, every gushing comment from a relative, felt like a public announcement of my own mediocrity. I love my sister. I really, truly do. I remember teaching her how to ride a bike, holding the seat until my own legs ached. But somewhere along the way, that pure, simple love got tangled up with this ugly, thorny vine of jealousy. So when she started her college applications, the pressure became unbearable. This wasn't just any school, it was the school. The one that would cement her legacy as the golden child and finalize my role as the afterthought, the footnote in her biography. I started having these daydreams, not of her failing, not exactly, just of her stumbling, just a little, just enough for me to catch my breath. I pictured a future where every family gathering was just the Harlow show, starring her amazing career, while I was asked about my perfectly fine, perfectly boring job. I would become Harlow's sister. That would be my primary identity. I couldn't stand it. I was so terrified of being erased that I convinced myself I wasn't trying to hurt her. I was just trying to protect myself. What else was I supposed to do, right? Just sit there and let it happen. It happened on a Tuesday night. Harlow knocked on my bedroom door, her footsteps hesitant in the hallway. She was holding her laptop like a sacred offering. Daphne, can you just look this over one last time? My eyes are blurring. I think it's done. My heart started doing this frantic, ugly hammering against my ribs. Of course, I said, forcing a smile, my voice sounding way too calm, way too normal. She sat on the edge of my bed, her usual boundless energy dimmed by exhaustion. Her eyes, though, were still shining with that relentless hope. "It's the one about us," she said, almost shyly, pushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "About growing up together. I wanted you to be the last one to read it." And it was. The essay was beautiful. God, it was so much more than beautiful, it was perfect. It was all about how I, her older sister, had been her anchor, her inspiration. She wrote about me teaching her to climb the big oak tree in our backyard, describing the feel of the rough bark under her small hands. She wrote about how I'd held her hand on her first day of school, telling her not to be scared of the big kids. She called me her North Star. Reading it, I felt a genuine, sharp pang of the old, pure love, the one from before the race started. And right behind it, chasing it away, came a tidal wave of ice-cold dread. This essay wasn't just good, it was a masterpiece of heartfelt, Ivy League admissions bait. This would get her in. This was the document that would seal my fate. She went downstairs to get a glass of water, leaving the laptop open on my desk, its screen glowing in the dim light, and I just stared at it. The cursor blinked at me, patient, rhythmic, tick, tick, tick. It was like it was daring me. "You're just going to let this happen?" A nasty, wheedling little voice whispered in my head. "You're just going to let her write this love letter to a version of you that doesn't even exist anymore, and use it to leave you in the dust forever." I told myself it wasn't a big deal. Just a few tweaks, to make it more authentic, to give her a little challenge, a taste of the real world. That's the lie I sold myself in that moment. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the edge of the desk as I leaned forward. I scrolled through the document, my eyes scanning for opportunities. I didn't do anything obvious. It was subtle, insidious. I took a powerful, complex sentence about our shared dreams and broke its back, swapping a key clause around so the meaning became muddled and weak. I changed there to there in a pivotal paragraph about our parents' sacrifices. I found the word compliment, which she'd used perfectly to describe our personalities, and changed it to compliment. I introduced a ghastly run-on sentence, a classic sign of sloppy, rushed writing, right in the middle of her conclusion. Each change was a tiny pinprick, a small act of sabotage that on its own looked like a simple, careless mistake. But together, they were poison. A slow-acting poison designed to make the reader doubt the writer's intelligence. It took less than 5 minutes. When she came back upstairs, a water bottle in her hand, I was leaning back in my chair, feigning a yawn. I closed the document. "Looks great, Harlow," I said, my voice a stranger's. "Honestly, it's perfect. Don't change a thing." And as she beamed at me, her face flooded with gratitude and absolute trust, I felt a sickening lurch in my stomach. It was the feeling of a finish line being crossed. In our secret, one-person race, I had finally, definitively won. The quiet in the house lasted for 4 days. 4 days of tiptoeing, of meals eaten in suffocating silence, of my parents exchanging worried, helpless looks over Harlow's head while she just pushed food around her plate. The rejection letter was gone from the island. Mom had finally, mercifully, thrown it away, but its ghost remained, sitting in Harlow's empty chair at dinner. On the 5th day, Harlow came into my room. She didn't knock. The door just swung open, and she was standing there, holding her laptop. Her face was eerily calm, which was somehow a million times more terrifying than if she'd been screaming or crying. The puffiness around her eyes was gone, replaced by dark circles that made her look older. "Harder. I need to show you something," she said. Her voice was flat, dead. All the music was gone from it. She walked over to my desk, set the laptop down with a deliberate click, and turned it to face me. My stomach plummeted. On the screen was a document comparison tool, the kind lawyers use. On the left was a file labeled Final Essay Backup. On the right, Submitted Version. And all over the right-hand version were these angry, glaring red highlights. Every single change I'd made. Every clumsy rephrasing, every misspelled word, every act of grammatical butchery. It was all there. A digital confession laid out in forensic detail. There changed to there. Compliment changed to compliment. The beautiful, flowing sentence I had mangled into a clunky mess. My mouth went dry. My brain was just white noise, a high-pitched ringing in my ears. I couldn't form a single word. I just stared at the screen, at the evidence of my own ugliness. She didn't raise her voice. She just looked at me, her eyes searching my face for something, an explanation, a flicker of remorse, anything, and asked the only question that mattered. Why? And everything I had prepared, all the flimsy, self-serving justifications I'd built in my head, they just crumbled into dust. I opened my mouth, and what came out was this pathetic, whining stream of consciousness. I don't know, it's not fair, Harlow. It's never been fair. I started babbling, the words tripping over each other, about mom and dad, about the constant comparisons, about the crushing pressure of being her less shiny sister. I just wanted you to know what it felt like for once, to not be perfect, just for 1 second. The words sounded so hollow, so disgustingly selfish, even to my own ears. She just listened, her expression unchanging, letting my pathetic excuses hang in the air and rot. When I finally ran out of steam, sputtering into a shameful silence, she didn't react. She didn't cry, she didn't yell. She just looked at me with a profound, bone-deep disappointment that was so much worse than anger. It was the look you give something you once treasured that you've just discovered is fake. "So you hurt me," she said, not as a question but as a statement of fact. "To make yourself feel better." She closed the laptop. The soft click echoed in the silent room like a gunshot or a gavel falling. And in that moment, I knew it wasn't about the college anymore. It was about the oak tree. It was about the first day of school. It was about her North Star falling out of the sky and turning out to be just a cheap piece of plastic. I hadn't just sabotaged her essay, I had sabotaged us. Harlow didn't scream at me. She didn't tell our parents in a fit of rage. She did something far cleaner, far more devastating. The next evening, she calmly asked Mom and Dad to sit down in the living room. I was upstairs in my room, pretending to read, my door ajar. I could hear the floorboards creak as they all settled onto the couch. My heart was pounding a sick, slow rhythm against my ribs, like it was trying to beat its way out. I heard her voice, steady and low. I couldn't make out the exact words, just the calm, even cadence of her explanation. It was followed by a profound, heavy silence that felt like it was sucking all the air out of the house. Then my mom's voice, thin and choked with disbelief. "Number Harlow, no. She wouldn't do that to you." Then I heard Harlow's footsteps coming up the stairs. My door opened. She stood there, her face unreadable, and just said, "They want to see the laptop." It wasn't a request. It wasn't a trial. There were no accusations thrown, no dramatic confrontations. It was colder, more clinical than that. It was an autopsy. I followed her downstairs and watched as my parents stared at the screen, at the red-marked document that laid my betrayal bare. I watched the confusion on their faces curdle into comprehension, and then into a wave of something I'd never seen from them before. It wasn't just anger. It was a kind of horrified pity. They looked from the screen to me and back again, and it was like they were seeing me for the very first time. Like I was a stranger, some kind of venomous creature they had accidentally raised in their home. My dad took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes, looking utterly defeated. And then the isolation began. It was systematic. They didn't yell, they didn't ground me, they didn't lecture me. They just excised me, politely. At dinner, they'd talk to Harlow about her backup school options, about her friends, and they'd talk to each other about work or the news. But when they turned to me, their voices would become formal, stilted. "Daphne, could you pass the salt?" It was the kind of tone you use with a difficult coworker, not your own child. All warmth was gone. My dad, who used to love talking with me about history documentaries, stopped. My mom, who would always leave my favorite snacks on the counter after a grocery run, stopped. The little threads that held us together, the casual intimacies of family, were cut, one by one. They weren't punishing me, they were quarantining me. I was a contamination. I had done the unthinkable, revealed a capacity for cruelty they never imagined I possessed, and they recoiled. I had spent my entire life terrified of being the second-best daughter, the one who tried hard but never quite measured up. And in one stupid, cowardly act, I had made myself no daughter at all. I was just a ghost at their table. The full weight of it landed in the middle of Thanksgiving dinner, months later. Harlow had ended up at a great state university about 3 hours away, and this was the first time she'd been home for a holiday. The house was filled with the loud, cheerful chaos of extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins all talking over each other. The air smelled like turkey and sage, and I was in my own personal hell. I was sitting at the big dining table, a plate of turkey and mashed potatoes growing cold in front of me. I was a ghost, a phantom in a cable-knit sweater. People would ask me polite, surface-level questions. "How are your classes, dear?" And before I could even finish a sentence, the conversation would be pulled away from me by some invisible current flowing back to the center of gravity. Harlow, she was holding court, and she wasn't even trying. She was animated, funny, her hands gesturing as she told a story about her new roommate and a disastrous laundry incident involving a red sock and an entire load of whites. Everyone was captivated, leaning in, laughing at all the right moments. Our uncle laughed so hard he snorted, and my mom watched her with this soft, proud smile that felt like a physical ache in my chest. Harlow looked happy. Genuinely, radiantly happy. She was thriving. The rejection that I had so carefully engineered hadn't broken her. It had just rerouted her. I tried to join in. I saw a tiny opening, a brief lull in the laughter, and I cleared my throat. "That sounds a lot like my freshman year roommate. Remember her, Harlow? The one who thought you could microwave ramen without water." The whole table went quiet for a beat. A few people shifted awkwardly in their chairs, their smiles freezing on their faces. My aunt suddenly became very interested in her cranberry sauce. Harlow, who had been looking at our cousin, didn't even turn her head. She just took a slow sip of water, completely ignoring my comment as if it were a gust of wind, and then seamlessly picked up her story. "Anyway, so then the fire alarm goes off." She didn't look at me, not once. Not with anger, not with hatred, not with any emotion at all. She looked through me. It was a complete and total erasure. There was no malice in it, there was nothing at all. I simply didn't exist in her world anymore. She had performed a kind of psychic surgery on herself and neatly, cleanly removed me from her life. And that's when it finally, truly hit me with the force of a physical blow. I had been so obsessed with this imaginary race, so terrified of her winning, that I'd torched the entire racetrack. I had wanted to stop her from getting to a place where she might outshine me. But she'd just found a different place, a different path, and she was shining there anyway. All I had managed to do was get myself kicked out of the stadium. I sat there, surrounded by the sounds of my family, the clinking of silverware and the warmth of their laughter, and I had never felt so utterly, completely alone. I got what I wanted. We weren't being compared anymore.